Hi, my name is Ted Ritzer, and I'm the host of the Greening Government webinar speaker series. And we're very fortunate today. We're joined by a panel of brilliant folks from around the world. And the Greening Government speaker series is a collaboration between Alberta's Climate Change Office, the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, and my department, Alberta Environment and Parks. And our kind of mission within the speaker series is to help governments in Alberta reduce their carbon footprint through their operations, but also help grow a green economy in Alberta. And on that note, I was fortunate enough to take a MOOC from Lund University, and I was exposed to all kinds of wonderful content. However, the content that I really thought I wanted to get into this series was a presentation that Dr. Peter Arnfalk had presented, and I twisted Peter's arm, and he agreed to present into this series on his wonderful research with the government of Sweden. And on that note, the format of this webinar will be a little bit different in that we'll have a presentation by Peter for 30 minutes, and then we're joined by our esteemed panelists here. There's Trent Johnson from Calgary-based Hookflash, Reg Cheramay with Edmonton-based Stormboard, and Mike Kennedy with Green Analytics. So each one of those panelists will have a chance to kind of respond to what Peter said and with kind of a specific question. So without any more ado, I will let Peter share his screen and do a wonderful presentation for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Ted. I hope everybody can hear me all the way from Malmö in Sweden. Thank you very much, Ted, for finding me. It's quite an honor here to be part of your series. And Ted, he actually found me on a sailboat in the Baltic Sea, and have insisted ever since that I actually made it to shore and that I presented in this series. So well done, Ted. You're very insisting in this, but I really enjoy having the possibility to be part of the very skilled panel here, and look forward to discuss with you here. What I want to talk with you today is about an initiative that we had in Sweden, which deals with public agencies, and especially when it comes to this kind of technology that we're using here now, kind of virtual meetings. I will also reflect a little bit on some of the research that I've been in touch with, and I won't go into length with that, but I want to refer to that in terms of the kind of findings that we've been doing and the drivers for working with what we've been doing there. So I will try to see if I can share my screen here now. And can everybody see my screen now? Excellent. So what I want to talk about is what we call the REMM method, a kind of systematic way of implementing virtual meetings in organizations, and to make virtual meetings part of a business culture in an organization, specifically in public agencies. And REM is short for Resfria möten in myndigheter in Swedish, which kind of translates into virtual meetings in public agencies. And sorry for if I'm a bit rusty when it comes to the English terms here on virtual meetings here. I'm mostly working in the Swedish context here. So if something is unclear, please stop me and ask questions here. So the main question is why are we concerned about virtual meetings in Sweden and elsewhere? Well, the main driving force for our work has actually been to reduce the carbon footprint, or to reduce emissions, CO2 emissions and equivalents. Reduce energy consumption, especially when it comes to business travel here. But the actual reason, the real reasons here, is that it's a kind of a win-win solution in the sense. It's really, really hard to convince politicians to do environmental initiatives, especially when it's come in the transport field, unless you actually get some other gains, economic gains and so on. But in this way, we can actually, by reducing the need to travel, we can actually cut costs, and significant amount of costs that goes into business travel, about 100 billion Swedish kronor a year that goes into business travel, and we're able to cut about in between 15 and 20% of that with our initiatives. But from an economic point of view, it's not the savings, it's more on the efficiency improvements in how organizations work. And this is where the major gains are. These are harder to see. They're not so visible and take some time, so harder to measure. But in terms of from an economic point of view, those are much bigger than the actual economic savings from business travel. Other potentially positive outputs of improving the way that we work in public agencies is to improve work-life balance by increasing the flexibility by the public workers. And I will come to that a little bit later on, some results from the research that we've done. An issue that hasn't been researched that much, but it's gender equality. We see when we look at our major airports in Sweden, and we look at how many men and how many women that actually travel in business, we see that 4 out of 5 business travelers are actually men. So, and the users of this technology are about 50-50 women and men. So it has a potential impact on gender equality as well. It also can contribute to regional development. Sweden is a very quite long country. It's far from as big as Canada, and I guess you have these kind of issues as well when it comes to trying to develop the different regions in the country. But this is one of the major issues that are promoting this kind of technology, regional development, and it's being used very much both in the northern and southern part of Sweden. And what is interesting is that we usually see it in the countryside or in the less dense part of the country where the equipment is being used, and less so in Stockholm because everybody's traveling there anyway, so why should they use it? We call it the Stockholm syndrome, but that was already taken by something else, so we stopped using that term. Also, when, for example, when the Icelandic people, they send off big clouds from the volcanoes, then we have to be prepared to use other ways of communicating and doing business. Also, when it comes to threats of different kinds, it's good to have a kind of a redundancy in possibilities of meeting and collaborating, and then this technology is good as well. So those are some of the drivers for virtual meetings. But still, we have so many. There are so many drivers, and there are so many positive, both economic, social, organizational, environmental drivers. So why isn't this happening en masse? Why are we still seeing increased travel? And why does it take time for this technology to be implemented in organizations? Well, there are a number of reasons, and that's what I've been spending some time in my research here looking at, and what are the blocking issues when it comes to implementing this in organization. And one of the issues is that it's seen as purely a technological thing. It's the IT department that runs this, and very little about when it comes to the human resource, or the environmental departments, or the travel departments. They're seeing more as a threat, and we need to see this as meetings in between people and collaboration, and part of the a management scheme. And by doing that and taking this issue quite seriously, we spend about 30%, managers spend about 30% of their time in meetings. And we're seeing that in public agencies, in several public agencies, more than half of these meetings have some kind of digital or virtual component, either totally virtually or partly virtual. And it does not work very well because they have no information, they have no training in how to do it. Like meeting management is a poorly handled issue per se, but specifically when it comes to how to deal this kind of meetings here. There's usually a travel managers in large organization, but there's no meeting manager. It's not an issue. So that's why we brought this up as an issue, and I did, together with the Swedish Transport Agency, we put together the findings from different organizations on success factors, bringing together success factors and pitfalls from research, from my own research and other research. We put together a 10-step tutorial on do's and don'ts. How do you actually efficiently implement virtual meetings in an organization so that you can reap some of the benefits that I talked previously about here. And when doing this, after putting together this kind of like very short plan, do, check, act handbook that I show you with a 10-step methodology. We based this on we ran it with a pilot project called Resefri, or Travel-less meetings, in which we involved both public and private organizations, and we did this during a number of years and tested it and bit by bit improved it. And then the Swedish government had a look at this, and they said that, well, this looks like an interesting work. We would like to include this as part of the Swedish Green IT agenda in 2010 to 2015, which was about green procurement and also green management of IT equipment. But this was a third part of that green IT agenda. So they said, well, let's use this 10-step methodology and use that in public agencies. So they commissioned 20 Swedish public agencies to work for 3 years with this methodology here. This was quite successful. So now we have 65 more public agencies have been commissioned to work with the REMM methodology in 2016. So we have a lot of things to do here. We're a small group of only 5 people coordinating this effort here, but we're not doing all the work. We're just coordinating the work, and in each agency there are about 3 to 6 persons working as a working group on in their own agencies, and then we work in networks. And we have different specific working groups on technology, on law issues, legal issues, on cultural issues, and so on. We run a lot of webinars like this one. We also have in real life meetings, occasionally, not many, but we have a good mix where we put a lot of emphasis on the social side, getting to know each other, which is quite important here. We focus on follow-up and reporting, and then coaching these organizations using the 10-step methodology here. And as I said, it's being coordinated by the Swedish Transport Administration, which is kind of contradiction in terms that the Swedish Transport Administration works on something to reduce the need for travel here. But it's been well received here. We also have a homepage which has a very poor but still a small English section. And this handbook that I talked about, which is kind of a guide, we had that translated because we were invited by the UN actually to present this for the UN this summer, and then we translated it into English. So please have a look in REMM.Se/en, and then you'll find the guide there. So as I said, it's a kind of a systematic approach that we have: plan, do, check, act. And some of the essence, I won't go through all the different steps here, but some of the essence in this, the way that we work, is that we want the organization to actually recognize meetings in general and virtual meetings in particular as a prioritized issue, and back it up also from the management. Unless the management actually works with this and recognizes it as an important issue, it won't happen. The IT department cannot run this on their own here. They need the support, and the management need to walk the talk themselves and guide the other employees. Introduce this into the travel policy in the best way. They call it actually a travel and meeting policy, and the public agencies are actually transforming their travel policies into a traveling and meeting policy, and also adding that up with steering documents and routines to back it up for virtual meetings. Have an organization in place, people who can run this. As I said, the meeting managers being in place to actually see to develop these issues in the organization, but involve other capacities in the organization, like, for example, human resource issues. And this is very much about changing a whole meeting culture. A meeting culture, it's hard to define what is a meeting culture. If you ask somebody, can you show me your meeting culture? Nobody can tell you what the meeting culture is. It's to say it's embedded in the walls somewhere. So it's like a religion or a ghost somewhere. And if you want to change, what should we change? So it's a hard target to aim. But if you start discussing it from how you actually act in meetings, and how what you prefer to do, and how you prefer what is a good meeting in an organization, then you start to get the discussion going, and you get a development in the organization. So it's very much about in the beginning it's just talking about replacing one physical meeting with a virtual meeting. And then the maturity in the organization increases when it comes to utilizing this and starting planning and designing projects, so that you can have some in real life meetings to start up, and then base your collaboration on virtual collaboration tools here. So, and building up procedures on when and how to conduct meetings and to communicate virtually here. And then help people to host, and especially the hosts are really important in this. Ted, you have a very important role here, and I think you're doing it very well when it comes to hosting these kind of meetings here. To structure them and to see that they work fine and efficiently, and that everybody can get a hearsay in the meeting here. But it's important to educate, to inform people how to do this, so that they feel comfortable when they're in the meeting, know what type of meeting to have for a special purpose here, and to train and not being put straight into the situation that you have, that you're supposed to present or to show something without having been in that situation before, because then you will feel uncomfortable. We have a lot of people witnessing about that before. And then to follow up and to analyze how well does this work here. So that's kind of the idea behind this, the work that we're doing in this 10-step methodology here. So we focus very much on the use and the users, the people behind the camera, or behind the microphone. How do they act and how do they feel, and how do we get a routine into this? But if we have been commissioned to help and increase the number of virtual meetings in Swedish public agencies. But even if we get better and the people in the agencies get better at using the technology, still there are some things blocking. Technology works generally fine, these kind of virtual meetings within organization, but in between different public agencies, we have different firewalls stopping, we have different types of technology that doesn't work with each other, and lack of common standards and so on. So we are also starting to work, and currently are working very intensively in trying to get rid of some of those barriers in between organizations in Sweden, so they better can, so we can connect the different agencies together here. Also, when it comes to the support, to kind of see to that, especially smaller agencies get better support. So, as I said, we work with a 10-step methodology, and this is a horrible picture, and I won't go through it in details. You see on the left side, you see the number of public agencies that we have, and we see the blue bars are when we assessed how far have you actually come when it comes to virtual meetings. How much have you implemented in your organization? And we measured in the beginning and the end of the first 20 agencies that we worked with, and we saw that in the progress in this methodology, we increased from an average from 41 to 91% development in this organization. So we managed to improve the way that they manage these meetings during this period of time. That also resulted in an increased share of virtual meetings. We compared and share with virtual meetings, I mean the number of all virtual meetings, audio, video, web conferencing, the summed up, and divided with the sum of number of virtual meetings and business travel. So we saw, compared with business travel, the amount of virtual meetings increased during this time. These are 3 agencies giving example of that. So this is one of the things that we did with that project. At the same time, we actually had were able to follow this development. It was a unique opportunity to follow a number of public agencies working with this. There was a research project at Lund University starting to looking into what are the impacts of increasing amount of virtual meetings, and how do we measure them? Because there was no standardized way of measuring the impact. So we looked at the societal parameters as travel, environmental, and climate. We also looked from the organizational side. We looked at the time, efficiency, and economy. And from the individuals, the employee side, flexibility, accessibility, and participation. And based on this, and the outcome of this research project was kind of a guideline also on how to measure and evaluate the impact of virtual meetings here that are being used now by the public agencies. I'll give you some of the example what actually came out of some of that research. One of the things is, as I said before, it's good to know when to use this kind of different tools, meeting tools for specific purposes. And we have, for example, follow-up meetings, education, workshops, product startups. We look at product startups. We see that only 3% of the respondents in the surveys we did in different public agencies think it's good to have a startup with these kind of virtual meetings, like startup with the audio conference. 71% thinks it's good to have face-to-face meetings. Well, if you, for instance, look at follow-up meetings, you see that most of the people prefer, the respondents prefer to do audio, video, web conferencing, and only 1/3 or 1/4 thought it was good to use it as a use face-to-face meeting for that. So different types of meetings, different type of technology preferences. So we put together a kind of a guide on when to use what, but this is very much individual for what kind of purpose that you have in what you do in your organization, and what kind of technology do you have and what do you prefer. But this is being used quite a lot, and it's been altered by every organization. Well, we think it's a little bit like this, and but it's start to provoke some thinking in how to do this. Some other impacts that we had as well, looking at the results from the research studies here. We noticed that we asked the users of the technology. It said how what you do with the time. Does it free time for you, the use of virtual meetings, and what do you do with that time? Well, 92% said, well, I use it for other work. And here we have the key behind why it actually improves efficiency. Also, it's actually we free time for more work. But also, when it comes to leisure time, that 86%, well, I use it to actually say have more time from family and friends and for other things. So I don't need to spend time in airports and traveling during that time. And this is the personal drivers and the ones that actually appreciate this technology. We also have some other effects that we found here. 77% felt it reduced their stress levels. We also asked about if it increased, and quite a lot of people felt that stressed because they didn't know how to handle technology. But that differed quite a lot in between organizations on the kind of support that the organization was giving and the training that they were giving the employees. About half of them said it increased the involvement in the company. They could actually attend information meeting. They could get more involved in projects that they were otherwise they couldn't get access to, and most of the people thought it made their workplace more attractive, especially young people. If you want to recruit young people in a public agencies that can sometimes seen as kind of a not so modern organizations start working at, when they showed that we have this kind of possibilities, flexibility at workplace, they had a larger possibility to recruit people. it also helped with retaining the workers. We also were asked about work performance, and we saw that about 78% thought it increased their work productivity because of virtual meetings here. But what was quite interesting here was that 76, almost as many, 3/4 experienced that virtual meetings increased both work productivity and work quality here. And this was kind of interesting to see. And many witnessed about improved flexibility in their workplace, and also the managers said, well, better utilization of the workforce, because you can use the best people in the country for a specific purpose. And you have agencies, public agencies, which have 20 to 30, sit in 20 to 30 places around the country here. But coming back to the greening issue here, how can we actually use this for greening purposes? We talked a lot about efficiency, money, and about the stress levels here. But we were able to follow up here with the help of the Swedish EPA. They actually, the agencies must, every year they must report on the CO2 emissions from travel. So we will have 180,000 employees travel that's been reported into the Swedish EPA every year. So we have very good data to follow up. And this is the trend that reflects the rest of the society when it comes to emissions, on CO2 emissions. So among the about 160 public agencies, we saw that the non-REM agencies, we saw that they increased their CO2 emission from travel, business travel, on average per capita, with nearly 10%. While the ones that we were working with, the REM agencies, at the same time had a decreasing tendency and decreased with more than 10% of the CO2 emissions. And this was the data that the government took in after the first 4 years when we worked with the initial 20 agencies. They took this in, and then we were commissioned to work with the additional 65 agencies based on these data. So it actually it came from a different ministry. This time it actually came from the environmental ministry. So it actually moved from one ministry, which was the industry and trade ministry, to the environmental ministry after they saw these data here. So this is how we have been working, the methodology that we've been working with, and some of the results that have come out of this work. And we were actually able to write a scientific article on this called Green IT in Practice, Virtual Meetings in Swedish Public Agencies, which was published this year in the Journal of Cleaner Production here. And I'll be happy to share that article with you if you're interested. We have also published a number of other articles around this when it comes to these measurements, and you find a list of these articles also at rem.se/English here. So that's what I would like to say about Fesfria möten i myndigheter, our initiatives, and I'm very, very glad that I had the opportunity to tell you about this.
Well, that's fantastic, Peter. I mean, what that really springs to mind for me is whether you could kind of take the same philosophy and apply it to all sectors of society, whether it's private, public, not-for-profit, the education sector. And I guess the way I would phrase that is an internet scale response to climate change. And what I wanted to do now is kind of pose that question to our panelists. And I'll start with Trent Johnson with Hookflash, because I know that Calgary-based company is collaborating with Google, Microsoft, Cisco, and they're working on an international standard, WebRTC standard, which is all about real-time communication within web browsers. So Trent, what do you think of this whole internet scale response to climate change using technology?
I think we need the microphone, Trent.
There we go. Thanks for the heads up, Peter. Ted, I think it's absolutely fabulous, and I'm grateful to you for hosting today and for convening this, because Peter, that content was really fantastic. Just and it's really exciting to see the value of virtual meetings quantified like that, and I'm envious of the progress that Sweden is achieving. So as Ted said, you know, we've been working on the way down deep in the stack on an underlying technical standard that will allow more developers and service providers to enable this type of virtual meeting work. And I've been able to do it for the last 5 or 6 years with a virtual team distributed throughout Eastern Europe, Canada, and the US, largely from my home office. And it sometimes has felt like a strange way to work after having been a guy who's gone to an office for most of his life. But your findings and a lot of the value propositions that you shared have really resonated with me. One of the ones I loved was better utilization of workforce, and our ability to work with unique experts in different areas, be it video, codec rendering, or security. This type of technology and this type of work has enabled us to work with remote experts regardless of geography, which is incredibly efficient and incredibly green. So I tend to be idealistic and optimistic, but I believe that in our homes and offices, the infrastructure from broadband to beautiful HD screens and increasingly easy to use audio and video infrastructure will encourage the vision you're sharing, Peter, of, you know, better life and work and more efficiency and environmental sensitivity and improvement through what we're doing today. Fantastic. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for that nice response.
So then I guess I'll turn it over to Reg Cheramay, who's working with the Edmonton-based Stormboard, who's an online brainstorming company. Reg, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I'm going to sort of echo the comments previously made. The content in that is fabulous, and the research that's been done to really prove out that, you know, virtual meetings can make real change in so many aspects. You know, an environmental aspect, but also, you know, a work productivity aspect where virtual meetings can actually be better than an in-person meeting in certain scenarios. So really exciting research, and there's a number of slides in there that I'm quite excited about, and there's some great content in there that I think really helps tell the story of why you know, virtual meetings and teams of distributed people working together in a collaborative fashion is the future, and for so many reasons that you illustrated there. So love the content. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I just being able to be here in the room here in the virtual room together with you, I think it's kind of proves this, that we actually get in contact with each other. And everybody is saying that, well, you have to meet in person first. Well, we haven't met in person first, but I'm really happy to get to know you here. So.
Absolutely.
Well, and I guess I'd pose the same question to Mike Kennedy, who's all about green analytics. Mike.
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, and thank you, Peter, for your presentation. I think you're touching on a very important thing that we know the technology has been there for a long time, but there still needs to be this scale-up effect where people start to more seamlessly adopt these kinds of practices in their business life. And so it's great to see the numbers and also the progress being made. And I think I would echo the fact that the field that Peter is publishing in is one that's growing dramatically, the use of green IT or green IS, green information systems, to address a number of environmental issues, travel, telecommuting. We look a lot at buildings and land management, and the degree to which we can continue to find those win-win solutions where IT that can be adopted without overwhelming the user or more seamlessly delivered will increasingly become more ubiquitous. And as it does, we'll start to see, as Ted mentioned, the sort of scale up or internet of scale solutions to climate change. So I'm optimistic that for the last 6 years, Green Analytics has been run completely virtual. We have folks across Canada and seem to be able to deliver productively like most IT firms. But now we need to bring that out to the wider civil society and public sector organizations. So Peter, I think the message is great, and I'm excited about the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to continue working with you, and I really like to contact all of you and see and learn more about your work there. What I would like to say also, and in addition to this, because now we've been praising the technology, it's great. You can actually do so much with it, and there are such a big opportunities. But at the same time, like, these changes doesn't come by themselves unless we help out. These agencies that we've been working with, we saw a big difference if they actually had an active work when it comes to the environmental work that they had on the work on their personnel, and also setting up targets for their travel. Otherwise, this technology will just be an add-on, and then we will continue with business as usual. You need policies, and you need to start thinking about what you're doing to have an active steering also towards more environmentally sound practices, using the technology, taking that the possibility and using that. But it doesn't happen by itself. You need active steering also if you want to reap the environmental benefits from it. And I think you have experienced that as well, Mike. So,
yeah. Well, and just before I open it up to questions, Peter, what I'd like to say that, I mean, what you've done on a national scale that I think is absolutely world-class and a wonderful example for other governments worldwide to emulate, and not just the public sector, but all sectors of society. You've actually documented the actual concrete reductions in CO2 emissions. And that's outstanding for a model for everyone to say, well, see, this is what you can reduce in concrete terms. So, I guess what I'd like to do is open it up to our webinar participants to pose any questions through the online Q&A function of any of the panelists for the remainder of the time of the webinar.
Excellent.
And while we're waiting for any questions to come in, guys, if there's any comments that you'd like to add, while we wait for questions to be posed?
Yeah, I'd jump in, Ted, and follow on to Peter's point around challenges, corporate policy, public policy, critical. I enjoyed Peter's pre-conference comments around ease of use and quality of service. And our experience as a provider of the kind of technologies that make this work, one of the biggest challenges is enabling high quality real-time voice and video over global public internet. So our collective ability as communities, countries, consumers to continue to encourage improving capacity and quality of broadband connection for our homes and businesses is critical to our ability to support quality of the success of virtual meetings, really.
Mm.
And one thing I'll add to this, just to preface further questions. We've got Reg Cheramay, who's the founder of Edmonton-based online brainstorming company Stormboard. Trent Johnsen is the CEO of Calgary-based Hookflash, which is responsible for sort of a development platform for real-time communication web browsers. And Mike Kennedy is working with Green Analytics that supports communities' analysis of kind of their carbon footprint. And of course, Peter has been doing research as he described. So just to give all of the webinar participants some context, and we've got a question that's just come in the REMM groups. What were the hardest habits to shift? And beyond technology, what other skills did you end up needing to train for groups to be successful?
And I guess, is that a question for me?
Yes,
I guess.
it is.
Yeah. What are the hardest habits to break? I think it's the summoning of different meetings. If you're at the head office, and we would have like agencies around in Sweden, and especially the ones up in our capital, Stockholm, would call to meetings, and they would expect people to come there and to attend for different meetings. And these would usually be senior advisors, senior management that have spent their entire life developing the skills of running really good meetings and managing projects and so on, based on the traditional face-to-face contacts and so on. And one of the major challenges there is to get these managers, the top managers, to actually sit down, spend time learning how to deal with this, and then daring to kind of what we call like walk around with their pants down and daring to fail in the technology, because they will do that in the beginning, and there are some people who would be avant-gardist in these, and they would lead the way. But you need somebody in the organization who actually can show the way and help others to actually change that kind of habit of calling, especially for at the head office there. This has been one of the major challenges. We have agencies that are situated. The head office would be in Sundsvall, which is about 600 kilometers north of Stockholm. They've been working with this technology for 15 years. They've been started with video conferencing. And when we asked the question, like, how much travel have you saved by using video conferencing, they didn't understand the question, because they've been working like this for 15 years. So most of the employees never did travel to these meetings there. But if you ask but they say, well, so when do you travel? Well, that is when the governmental office calls us to Stockholm. But don't they have the video conferencing equipment? No, but they don't use it. Is this recorded? Can you cut that out? Well, they know the problem. So yes, so that is one of the more challenging things to deal with. And the second question there, Ted, can you remind me?
We haven't got a second question, but what I would pose...
Second part of the question. I think
sorry. And beyond technology, what other skills did you end up needing to train for groups to be successful?
Yeah, well, I think the most important skill that's being particularly in virtual meetings is how to, for the meeting manager or the person leading the meeting, actually to lead it in a way that he or she directs the words to different participants and see to that everybody is heard and seen, and it makes it clear, and see to that it's a structured meeting. These meetings often need a little bit more structure than others, and that you actually see to that you get a little bit of that chit chat, the social part in the meeting as well, so that people can relax and it doesn't feel so stiff. So that's a very, very important part. So train project managers and middle and top management in how to run these meetings. That's a success factor.
Well, I guess one of the other things that I would like to comment on, at least in my research, Peter, I haven't come across a study that involved, the number of agencies and the number of employees, and particularly the context of actually documenting the CO2 emission reduction through the use of virtual meetings. Is there anybody else that has done this kind of research like you've done?
I haven't seen any similar like this on this scale. There's been British Telecom did research on this already in the 90s, and AT&T has done research on it also in the 90s, early 2000. The Japanese have done, the Australians have done, but not more with a few individual organizations that they studied. We had the fantastic opportunity to study this many organizations in a bulk and moving forward. And these are average figures, because and there you can see a trend. It's hard to see from individual organization that you can see travel savings, because it depends so much if they outsource some part of the business, if they add on another office, they need to start seeing each other, travel a little bit on that. But if you see it on these many employees, 180,000 employees and so many agencies, you get rid of the noise, the statistical noise, and you can actually see a pattern from that. And that I haven't seen. I haven't seen others that have been able to get that many organizations in there.
So we've got a comment here, not a question, but to note, there is also a savings in human safety, for example, with not having to drive in poor winter conditions. I think a lot of Albertans and Canadians in general, Peter, would echo that with lots of enthusiasm.
Well, that is quite important in Sweden as well, I tell you, especially up north. So.
Well, the other thing that I was curious, Peter, was what kind of questions did you get posed when you met with the UN?
Well, it was a lot about they tended to talk about the UN. We see UN as one organization, but we actually had representatives from some 20 plus UN organization, UNDP, UNEP, etc. and it seems like they work very independently themselves. They have their own technological platforms themselves. So there's incompatibility, that's a difficult English word, in between the different agencies. So we were discussing that quite a lot, and the possibilities of actually finding a common platform for that. But one of the things that was discussed, like on the technical, that was more on the technical side, but was the two things. That's cultures, and that we have different meeting cultures around the world, and the UN is truly an international organization. So how do you make meetings work on an international scale? And time zones. How do you deal with the different time zones around the world? And because my experience from working with these organizations, we're a very quite homogeneous society in Sweden with one time zone. So so there I cannot really help, but there's great research being done that on international or virtual organizations around the world that can answer that in a better way. And I know INSEAD in Paris, they have done good work on that.
It seems to me the common sense kind of way of if we are to globally respond to climate change, then I think there's kind of like a direct relationship with the larger the geography, the greater the potential CO2 emission reduction if you're dealing with a global organization like the UN or large transnational corporations like Apple or IBM or whoever. I mean, the larger the geography, the more potential CO2 emission reduction if you replace physical travel with virtual meetings.
Mm. But you also have these, but then I'm coming back again to if you got to have an ambition to actually do this, because we can build up and we can have a lot of nice virtual meetings around the UN, and then we get to know each other. Now I got to know you, Ted, so maybe I should invite you to Sweden and come here, and I'll do a little bit of skiing here and so on. So this can actually generate travel as well, unless we actually steer this in terms of policy, price, and so on, so that you actually put it that you actually see a decreasing trend. Otherwise, you would have a generating effect as well. But yes, it gives the possibility, but we got to watch out, because these rebound effects, as we call them, they're rebounding all the time. That it's as soon as we release capacity, money, time, and so on, what do we do with this time?
Well,
what does the organizations with the time? Well, they do more business, and in that business, there will be part of that business that will be that will lead to more travel. So you have to be careful about the direction, and he see a clear direction on what we're doing.
So here's a question for each of the panelists. How do each of the panelists think they can impact climate change through virtual meetings? So I'll start with Mike there.
Yeah, I mean, how do we impact climate change through virtual meetings? Is that essentially what you're asking?
How do you think you can? I think you've already sort of.
I mean, yeah. So just an anecdote, but so right now I'm predominantly based in Edmonton, Alberta. My wife is an academic, and we are located in Pullman, Washington, in the U.S., and have been going through a green card process right now. So I cannot travel outside of the U.S. and had to conduct my business primarily virtually over the last 6 months. And when I first found out that I wasn't going to be able to travel, I thought, I work in Alberta. A lot of business people in Alberta are face-to-face people. A warm handshake is, essential. I'm not seeing that trend. I'm being forced into virtual existence. I'm not seeing it detrimental to my business. In fact, it's making our organization more creative. It's forcing other folks in the business to create capabilities that they didn't have before. And I think that's something, Peter, that I'd be interested in looking at further, is how does this virtual meetings and taking on responsibility kind of shift if you take away the need for that warm handshake between management or leaders in the organization. So I've cut down over 5 flights a month over the last 6 months. Wow. I've noticed a benefit to my firm in terms of cost, overhead, because I was the primary traveler. I'm
it's not, a lot of money. It's
a lot of money. Less of a personal, what I call a bureaucratic bulge. I'm not tied up at eating bad food in airports and, the stress of that does, causes inflammation in your body and all that kind of. So obviously Peter's speaking to the choir here. And having been forced into this, it's just been, there's still certain folks that I'm having a hard time communicating with virtually, partly a generational issue, but partly just a rejection of being virtual. So we're pushing predominantly to be virtual. So
yeah, and I'll just in closing, I'll give Reg and Trent an opportunity to respond as well to that question. How are you? What are you doing individually?
Go ahead, Trent. Thanks, Reg. I no longer own and operate an automobile for the last 2 years, which has been fantastic. I'm lucky enough to live centrally in Calgary and make good use of trains and bikes and looking forward to Uber, but no longer operate a car and work daily with people in Serbia and England without ever leaving the office you see me in today. So I don't know how much less flying there's been, but a lot less flying. And it's been outstanding.
It's excellent. Reg?
So at Stormboard, we take a little bit of a different tack. We don't do any voice and video because that's being handled by a ton of other players. So we've got we're solving the virtual meeting problem of trying to make those virtual meetings better. And oftentimes, one of the things missing is a spatial collaborative space, a whiteboard. One of the reasons people get together in a room is to gather around a whiteboard and fight over markers and get those ideas out in a very spatial fashion, because that's how often people think. You don't think of people often collaborating in a creative way around a spreadsheet. You may do that for your financials, but if you're going to collaborate, you need a spatial space. And so back here, we've got Stormboard. This is an example of our product. It works on any device. This happens to be a large format touchscreen, but it works on your laptops or any device. So what we're doing is we're providing a piece of the virtual meeting that's really been missing. We can have a great voice and video meeting together, but if we need to really get work done and get all the ideas together and then turn those ideas into action, you need some powerful tools to power that. And voice and video replaces the personal part of a meeting, that how do we connect? How do we see each other eye to eye? But it doesn't replace that real collaborative effort. And so that's what we really try to do with Stormboard is really try to bring people together. And, it's often funny, we hear stories of people trying to be collaborative and they actually have physical whiteboards in their offices that they have someone hold a webcam up to and walk around so they can have the other virtual people do that. When they find Stormboard, they just freak out because they're like, wait a sec, not only can they see it, they can actually interact with it in real time across multiple locations. It's really transformative. So, we see a huge trend in large enterprises, really looking at adopting this type of technology to change how they do their meetings and not only make virtual meetings a bigger part of what they're doing, but actually make virtual meetings even better than their physical meetings. Because they can capture all this data, they can continue working with it. So, I forecast a massive transformation in how companies collaborate and how virtual meetings can be a really big part of that.
So I guess what I would like to close with, Peter, is any parting thoughts you want to leave with our webinar audience?
Well, I think that the experience that we had in Sweden, they're definitely applicable to many other countries. We are blessed with good bandwidth in Sweden, but when it comes to virtual meetings, like we don't need to have the best, fanciest equipment. I think that it's more of a cultural thing. And once you start thinking about the possibilities, you can start with audio conferencing, you can start with quite simple equipment, but it's a matter of thinking. It's a mind shift, and it's a cultural thing. So thank you for bringing this up, and on the other side of the Atlantic here, and I wish you good luck with spreading the word over on the American side as well.
Well, excellent, Peter. We're going to have another webinar presentation tomorrow at 11 a.m. and we're actually have an expert on virtual meetings. Elise Keith, the founder of Lucid Meetings, will be speaking at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So again, thanks ever so much to all you brilliant people in helping introduce the topic of virtual meetings as a way of reducing Alberta's carbon footprint.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.